keeps two dwarf hamsters called Pixie and Tricky. Tricky has lots of energy, runs on the treadmill, is curious about every corner of the cage, stuffs his cheeks with food, and generally behaves like a hamster should. Pixie, on the other hand, is a bit lethargic and almost never goes on the treadmill. So my daughter got a bit worried about her and asked if she could take her to the vet. "Okay," I said, "if it makes you feel better." The vet found nothing physically wrong with Pixie, but agreed that she wasn't behaving like a hamster should. She said that she knew a motivational squeaker called Mr. Hammy who could help Pixie. He had helped many hamsters to change for the better. An appointment with Mr. Hammy was expensive, more than the price of a new TV set even. But the happiness of my daughter is beyond all rational thought. So we booked an encounter with the renowned Mr. Hammy. He turned out to be an amusing hamster who had done some incredible things with his life. They were so incredible that it was difficult to imagine that he was really a hamster at all. He was very confident and very sure of what hamsters should be doing with their lives. The first thing he did was to reassure Pixie that she hadn't done anything wrong to be like she was. He told some inspiring stories of how he too had once been lethargic and limited in his ambition before he turned his life around on the golden hamster wheel of opportunity. All she needed to do was to realise that there was another life that she could aspire to and so reach her full potential. If she worked hard enough, she could become something that he called a giant dwarf hamster. He gave Pixie a list of targets and goals to achieve, how many revolutions to do on the wheel, when to tidy her nest, what to eat. This was going to be the start of her journey, an adventure into allegorical stories and famous quotes. Mr. Hammy said, "Giant dwarf hamsters don't take no for an answer. They don't know the meaning of can't. They get things done and fight their way to the top despite all the negativity that they encounter around them. Giant dwarf hamsters rule the fucking world!" Pixie was amazed by all the attention being lavished upon her. She imagined that she was unimportant in the grand scheme of things. And she actually became a bit more animated as a result. She lost weight, improved her fitness, and was determined to be the best giant dwarf hamster that had ever lived. But Tricky was puzzled by her obsessive behaviour. "Pixie," he said, "what are you trying to do?" Pixie replied that she was achieving her ambition. "Which is what?" asked Tricky. "To be a giant dwarf hamster," said Pixie. "But why do you want to be that? And who says that you have to be a giant dwarf hamster?" Well, Mr. Hammy said that the purpose of a hamster is to be a giant dwarf hamster. Tricky said, "But how does he know? And who's to say what being a hamster is? Surely a hamster is what you are and what you do naturally. And if we all wanted to become giant dwarf hamsters, who would be the dwarf hamsters? And would some ambitious hamsters then want to become colossal dwarf hamsters? And even if you became a colossal dwarf hamster, you'd still be a pet in a cage, owned by a little girl. That hamster wheel over there is going nowhere, no matter how hard or how fast we run." Then Pixie had an epiphany. She had got the whole thing backwards. She couldn't be herself because she was trapped in a cage. And instead of identifying the problem with the cage, she identified the problem as being within herself. She couldn't be who she was because she was trapped in a cage. She needed to be free of walls and bars so that she and Tricky could run with real direction and purpose. As I observed the hamsters one night, I could see that something had changed. They had become aware of their captivity. Their suffering moved me greatly, and I took pity on them. So without telling my daughter, I set them free in the garden. For the first time in their lives, they could run in a direction that made absolute sense to them. They were so happy. They never looked back at me. Not once. Then a fox caught them both and gobbled them up. They didn't have long in the wild, but those few precious heartbeats of freedom that they enjoyed under a vast starry sky was enough. They were the happiest moments of their lives. Yeah. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was a bit rough at the start, but we got there in the end. You cannot imagine how nervous I was there, because I'd hyped that up so massively. I thought, if I blow this, I'm screwed.